So what do you get when you cross a symphony with a spreadsheet? I know, it sounds like the setup to a pretty weird joke, right? But the truth is, the worlds of music and mathematics are way more connected than you might think. And today, that amazing fusion of art and algorithm is creating sounds and songs in ways we've never, ever heard before. Now, if you're thinking this whole composing with code thing is some brand new sci-fi idea, well, think again. People have been connecting music and numbers for a very, very long time. I mean, look at this quote. It's from a Roman statesman, Cassiodorus, from over 1,500 years ago. This idea that music is fundamentally built on numbers is ancient, and it really sets the stage for our whole journey today.
All right, so let's jump in our time machine. We're going to start way back, tracing this long and honestly surprising history of using rules and systems to make beautiful music.
You can see this thread stretching across millennia. It really kicks off with Pythagoras back in ancient Greece, who had this huge realization that musical harmonies, the sounds that we find pleasing, were all governed by simple, clean numerical ratios. Fast forward a bunch of centuries, and you have Guido d'Arezzo in the 11th century, literally turning written text into melodies by mapping vowels to certain notes. And then, even a certified genius like Mozart gets in on the action with his musical dice game, using chance and a set of rules to let anyone compose a unique waltz.
So just how powerful was Mozart's little dice game? Well, the number of possible waltzes you could create is this. That's 13 followed by 28 zeros. Now, to put that into perspective, because that number is just insane, if every single one of those compositions was a grain of sand, you could make a line of sand that stretches 130,000 times the diameter of the entire Milky Way galaxy. It's a perfect example of how even a really simple set of rules can unlock just a staggering, almost infinite amount of creativity.
Okay, so we've seen the history, but what's the actual bridge here? How do we get from those historical examples to the kind of algorithmic music that's happening right now? Well, it all comes down to one single essential concept. And that big idea is mapping. You can think of mapping as the ultimate translator. It's the bridge that connects the world of numbers to the world of sound. It's basically the process of saying, okay, this number from my algorithm equals this note, or this number controls this rhythm, or even how loud or soft a note is played. It's the key that turns abstract data into something you can actually listen to.
So, how does it actually work in practice? Well, it's a surprisingly simple three-step dance. First, you need data. An algorithm spits out a string of numbers. Second, the composer decides on their musical toolkit. What notes are available. Maybe it's all 12 notes of a scale. And third, you just create a rule to connect the dots. The number 1 becomes a C, the number 2 becomes a C sharp, and on and on. And that's it. That's the fundamental secret of how numbers become notes.
Now, if that's the basic recipe, what happens when you throw the massive power of modern computers into the mix? Well, the simple idea of mapping just explodes into these incredible new sonic playgrounds. All of a sudden, composers have access to these powerful mathematical tools that can generate music in ways that were just unimaginable before. So first up is chaos theory. And don't let the name fool you. This isn't about pure randomness or noise. It's actually about finding these beautiful hidden patterns inside of systems that, on the surface, seem totally unpredictable.
And here's the real mind-bender. The math that models chaos can be incredibly simple, but when you run those simple equations over and over, feeding the result back into the start, they produce these outputs that are super complex and never, ever repeat. But they still feel structured. They still make sense. When you turn that into music, you get a melody that's always evolving, always changing, but somehow always sounds coherent.
Next up, we've got something called cellular automata. The easiest way to wrap your head around this is to picture a giant checkerboard. And every single square on that board can be in one of two states, either alive or dead. The fate of each square in the next turn is decided by just a few simple rules based on its neighbors. So let's look at the most famous example, John Conway's Game of Life. The rules are so simple. A dead cell with 3 live neighbors flips on. A live cell with 2 or 3 neighbors stays on. Any other situation, and the cell turns off. That's it. And yet from just those 3 basic instructions, you get these breathtakingly complex, evolving, almost lifelike patterns. And composers can map those evolving patterns directly to music, creating these incredibly intricate textures from the absolute simplest logical seeds.
And for our last modern example, we have something I think is really beautiful: L systems. The core idea here is to think about music as if it were a growing plant. L systems were actually invented by a biologist to model how real organisms grow.
So here's how it works. You have these substitution rules, and you start with a simple musical idea. Think of it as a seed. Then you apply a rule that expands that seed, and then you apply it again to the new, bigger thing, and again, and again. That one little seed recursively branches out and grows into this complex, fractal-like musical phrase. It's a way to compose music that feels like it has a totally organic, natural structure.
Okay, so this all naturally leads us to a really big, almost philosophical question. I mean, if a computer is generating all of these complex patterns and notes, what's the role of the human artist in all of this? Who is actually the composer here?
This really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It gets right to the heart of what creativity even is. If an algorithm is spitting out all the notes, does that mean the computer gets the credit for composing the music? The source material for this explainer offers up a really fantastic and elegant answer with this metaphor. Think of the algorithm like a block of marble. The raw material itself, the stone, it doesn't make any aesthetic claims. It's just rock. It's what the artist, the sculptor, Michelangelo, does with that material that transforms it from a lump of rock into a masterpiece. So that's the key distinction. The algorithm is just the tool. It's the paintbrush. It's the marble. It generates what the source calls the prime matter, the raw, unformed stuff of music. But the composer, the human, they are the vision. They're the ones making all the critical creative choices, which algorithm to use, how to map the data, and most importantly, using their own taste and aesthetic judgment to shape that raw output into a meaningful piece of art. The creativity is still fundamentally human. So what does all this mean for the future of music? Is this the end of composition as we know it? Is it goodbye to human composers? Not even close. If anything, this is the beginning of something completely new. What we're really seeing here is the grand opening of a brand new path for musical discovery. This isn't about replacing human composers. It's about giving them incredibly powerful new tools to discover sounds and structures that were literally impossible to find before. It's a path that's been lying dormant in the background of music history, just waiting for technology to finally give us the key. And that leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to ponder. We have only just begun to scratch the surface of this. It makes you wonder, what incredible new music, what entirely new sonic worlds are still out there, just waiting for us, hidden away inside the beautiful and complex language of mathematics?